Well, Brent, state lawmakers are asking some of the same questions that claimants are asking. Now that they know their money that was supposed to go into their accounts didn't make it, where did that money go, and when will they get reimbursed?
I'm out a week of unemployment that I don't know when I'm going to see. So it's very irritating.
At least 700 Department of Labor accounts saw their banking information change without their knowledge. According to the governor's spokesperson, Max Reese, it's less than 0.1% of the total number of claimants. But it's enough to raise lawmakers' eyebrows to question the security at the Department of Labor.
It's not a small event for constituents that have had their weekly allocation of unemployment swiped. In many cases, it's the difference between having food or not having food or paying other bills.
Senator Craig Minor and Representative Joe Paletta are calling for a public conversation to shed light on the scenario.
I'm not blaming them because I have no way of knowing really who's at fault and how many people it involves. But I do know that historically the information has been sketchy at best from the Department of Labor.
The Department of Labor told Fox 61 News they're not aware of any intrusions into the Connecticut Department of Labor systems. Yet they acknowledge that the Department of Labor is working with state and federal law enforcement on this issue. Some people were told by unemployment call center employees they will not get reimbursed until the investigation is concluded. That's where Minor says the state should step in.
Unless someone can definitively say that an individual defrauded the state and that they were trying to somehow scam the state on their own account, that the state probably should find itself in the same situation and make people whole.
According to state statute, the Department of Labor is required to notify both the auditors and the comptroller of loss. Fox 61 News learned the department did send the state a memorandum in accordance with state law. It's unclear how much money, if any, the state has lost and if the money will end up bouncing back to the Department of Labor or not. Wells Fargo has confirmed to Fox 61 that the bank account numbers found on DOL accounts were invalid. The lawmakers haven't yet announced a date on when they expect to hold this public hearing. Live in Hartford, Taylor DiCello, Fox 61 News.
All right, Taylor, thank you. If your account information has changed without your knowledge, you should reach out to the Department of Labor's contact center at filectui.com. You can also call the 3 numbers we have listed here. This information is on our website at fox61.com. If you want us to investigate your story, reach out to us at share61@fox61.com.